Rain poured down.
and to the woman who
As I
embraced
sat on the wet curb
Cheers.
outside those iron gates, my torn dress clinging to my shivering body. Behind
Ladies
me,
and gentlemen,
my husband
may
was
I present
celebrating
the
with
future of
champagne,
this city,
celebrating
my
getting rid of
fiancé.
me.
Miss
He had
Catherine,
just dragged me out of our mansion in front of 200 guests, called me worthless, announced he was replacing me with his mistress, who was wearing my pearl necklace. What he did not know, I was 8 weeks pregnant with his child. But here's the twist he really did not see coming.
Not
That
anymore,
mansion
Gregory.
he was
Get
so
out.
proud of,
Enjoy
the
flight.
one he claimed his grandfather built, the estate he said had been in his family for 4 generations, my father owned it. Every single brick, every chandelier, every blade of grass. My husband had been paying rent to my family for 5 years, and he never even bothered to read the name on his own lease. He threw me out of my own inheritance, and he had absolutely no idea. This is the story of how a man destroyed his wife on borrowed ground, and how that ground swallowed him whole. Stay with me until the end, because the sweet, satisfying revenge, it is worth every second. This is a story about a woman who was thrown away like she was nothing, and discovered she was everything. If you have ever been made to feel worthless by someone who claimed to love you, this story will remind you of a truth they tried to make you forget. This morning, I woke up in that mansion with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers. This morning, I discovered I was pregnant with my first child. After 3 years of trying, 3 years of disappointment, 3 years of watching hope die month after month. I practiced in the mirror how I would tell my husband the happy news. I imagined his face lighting up with joy. I imagined him spinning me around, laughing, finally looking at me the way he used to when we first fell in love. I imagined us becoming a real family at last. That was 12 hours ago. 12 hours that might as well have been a lifetime. 8 hours ago, I discovered my husband had been sleeping with another woman for 6 months. I found the photographs, I saw the proof with my own eyes, each image a knife twisting deeper into my heart. 4 hours ago, I was dragged across those pristine marble floors by security guards, while 200 people watched in horrified fascination. Some of them laughed. Most of them pulled out their phones and recorded my humiliation like I was entertainment, like my destruction was content for their social media feeds. My husband, the man who had promised to love me forever, who had slipped a diamond ring on my finger and sworn vows before God and our families, stood there with champagne in his hand and told everyone I was worthless, that I contributed nothing to our marriage, that everything around us, every chandelier and painting and piece of furniture belonged to him and him alone. He was wrong about all of it, but especially about that last part. Because here's the thing about that mansion, about those marble floors that my tears had stained, about every single inch of the empire. Gregory Ashford claims he built from nothing with his own 2 hands and brilliant mind. It all belongs to my father, every brick, every chandelier, every blade of grass in those manicured gardens, every rose in that garden he claims his grandmother planted. And Gregory has absolutely no idea. My name is Josephine Callahan, and this is the story of how I lost everything in one brutal night and discovered I never lost anything at all. This is the story of how the man who threw me out, like garbage, was standing on borrowed ground the entire time, building his castle of lies on a foundation owned by the very family he despised. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the morning that started it all, when 2 pink lines changed everything. I woke up nauseous that Tuesday morning in early November. At first, I thought it was just stress manifesting in my body the way it always did. Gregory and I had been distant for months, sleeping in the same bed, but existing in different worlds. I had been losing sleep worrying about our marriage, about the growing coldness in his eyes, about the way he looked through me instead of at me. But when the nausea hit me again as I tried to brush my teeth, and then again as I attempted to drink my morning coffee, something clicked in the back of my mind, a possibility I had almost stopped believing in. I was late, almost 2 weeks late, and I was never late. With shaking hands, I dug through my bathroom cabinet, pushing aside half-empty bottles of lotion and forgotten makeup, until I found an old pregnancy test I had bought months ago during one of our many failed attempts to start a family. The box was dusty, the expiration date still valid but approaching. I had stopped taking these tests regularly because the disappointment had become too heavy to bear month after month. 3 years of trying, 3 years of temperature charts and ovulation tracking and timed intimacy that felt more like a medical procedure than an act of love. 3 years of Gregory growing colder with each negative result, as if my body's failure to conceive was a personal insult to his masculine pride. I sat on the edge of that cold marble bathtub in our massive master bathroom, the test stick clutched in my trembling fingers, and I waited. The longest 3 minutes of my entire life ticked by on the clock mounted above the door. I could not look. I could not breathe. I could not do anything but sit there and pray to a God I was not sure I believed in anymore. When I finally forced myself to look down, my vision blurred with tears before I could even focus on the result window. 2 pink lines. Clear and unmistakable against the white background. I stared at them so long, my eyes began to sting and water. 2 pink lines. After everything we had been through, after all the tears and the fertility treatments and the hope that kept dying and being reborn month after month, only to die again. 2 pink lines that meant everything was about to change. I touched my still flat stomach with wonder, my fingers pressing gently against the place where a new life was already growing, already dividing and multiplying, already becoming a person. "Hello, little one," I whispered into the empty bathroom, my voice cracking with emotion. "I am your mother, and I am going to love you more than you can possibly imagine." Tears streamed down my face, but for the first time in months, they were happy tears, joyful tears. For the first time in what felt like years, I felt genuine hope blooming in my chest. Maybe this baby would bring Gregory back to me. Maybe this was the miracle our dying marriage needed. Maybe when he heard the news, when he realized we had finally succeeded in creating life together, he would remember why he had fallen in love with me in the first place. I hid the pregnancy test in my jewelry box beneath my grandmother's pearls, the ones Gregory had given to someone else, planning the perfect reveal. Gregory was hosting a dinner party that night, one of his elaborate affairs with important business associates, society people, local politicians, the usual crowd of wealthy and powerful individuals he loved to impress and manipulate. I would wait until after dinner, pull him aside to somewhere private, and tell him the news that would change our lives. I imagined the scene in vivid detail as I got dressed that morning, his face lighting up with surprised joy, him picking me up and spinning me around the way he used to when we were dating, him kissing me deeply and telling me he loved me, that he had always loved me, that he was sorry for being so distant. I imagined us becoming a real family at last, the 3 of us against the world. I was such a fool, such a naive, trusting, pathetic fool. What I did not know, what I could not possibly have known, as I stood there, dreaming of reconciliation and new beginnings, was that I was not the only one planning a revelation that night. Gregory had his own announcement prepared, one that had been in the works for months, and his announcement would not bring us together. It would destroy me completely. But before I tell you about the dinner party that shattered my world, I need to tell you about what else I discovered that morning. Because the same day I found out I was carrying my husband's child, I also discovered that my husband was a liar, a cheater, and a fraud. I had hired a private investigator 3 weeks earlier. It cost me $2,000, every single penny I had secretly saved over 2 long years, by returning clothes Gregory bought me and pocketing the refunds, by skimming small amounts from the household budget he gave me, by selling jewelry he had forgotten about on consignment at a shop across town where no one knew me. Gregory controlled every bank account, every credit card, every aspect of our financial life. He gave me a monthly allowance for household expenses and reviewed every statement with the suspicious eye of an accountant looking for fraud. That $2,000 represented my entire net worth as a married woman, the sum total of my financial independence after 3 years of marriage to a supposed millionaire. The investigator was a tired-looking man in his 50s named Frank, who operated out of a small office above a dry cleaner's shop. He met me in a parking garage downtown that morning, away from prying eyes and security cameras, and handed me a thick manila envelope with a look on his weathered face that told me I was not going to like what was inside. "I prepared myself," he said quietly, "but nothing really prepares you." I opened the envelope with hands that would not stop shaking, no matter how hard I tried to control them. Photographs spilled out onto my lap like evidence in a criminal trial. Gregory and a blonde woman at the Whitmore Hotel downtown, entering a room together in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon. Gregory and the same woman at an intimate restaurant I had never heard of, holding hands across a candlelit table, gazing into each other's eyes. Gregory kissing her passionately in his car, parked in some secluded spot where he thought no one would ever see. Her name was Iris Montgomery. I recognized her immediately from the dozens of times she had come to our house over the past 6 months. His business consultant, he had called her, with a smile that I now realized had been mocking me the entire time. She had been coming to our home for meetings that lasted until midnight, meetings that happened in his locked study where I was never allowed to enter. I had made her coffee with my own hands. I had smiled at her and welcomed her into my home. I had trusted my husband when he said it was just business, that she was helping him restructure his company, that I would not understand the complicated financial matters they were discussing. All those nights I had gone to bed alone while he stayed up working with her. All those weekends he had been away on business trips. All those times he had come home smelling of unfamiliar perfume and claimed it was from a client who had hugged him. But the photographs were not even the worst part. The investigator had found something else while digging into Gregory's background, something I had not asked him to look for, but that he felt obligated to share. Financial documents, bank records, internal memos from Gregory's company that had been carelessly discarded. Frank leaned against his car and lit a cigarette while I read through the papers, my horror growing with each page I turned. Ashford Technologies, the cloud computing startup that Gregory bragged about at every dinner party, the empire he claimed to have built from nothing through sheer genius and determination, was $4.7 million in debt. My husband, the successful tech millionaire who wore custom suits and drove a $100,000 car, was drowning in red ink. He had been hiding losses for at least 2 years, falsifying reports to investors, moving money between accounts to create the illusion of profitability. The company was a house of cards, and a single strong wind would bring the whole thing crashing down. The empire he boasted about to anyone who would listen was built entirely on lies. For one long moment, sitting in my car in that dim parking garage, with evidence of betrayal scattered across my lap, I almost felt sorry for him. He must be so scared, I thought, so desperate to maintain the illusion of success that defined his entire identity, so terrified that the world would discover the truth about who he really was beneath the expensive suits and confident smile. Then I remembered the two pink lines on that pregnancy test, and I remembered the photographs of him kissing another woman, and whatever sympathy I had felt evaporated like morning dew. I had three options laid out before me, each with its own risks and consequences. Option 1. Confront Gregory immediately. Show him the photographs and the financial documents. Demand a divorce and fight for whatever scraps I could salvage from the wreckage of our marriage. Option 2. Stay silent and plan my escape carefully. Gather more evidence. Consult with lawyers. Build a case that would ensure I got what I deserved when I finally left. Option 3. Wait until after the dinner party. Tell him about the pregnancy first, and give him one last chance to choose us, to choose our family, over his mistress and his lies. I chose option 3, not because I was weak, although looking back now through the lens of bitter experience, maybe I was. I chose it because I wanted my child to know someday that I had given their father every possible chance. I wanted to be able to look my baby in the eyes when they were old enough to understand and say honestly that I tried. I really tried to make it work. I did not know that while I was sitting in that parking garage, contemplating how to save my marriage, Gregory was already planning option 4. A public execution designed to destroy me so completely that I would never recover. The Ashford estate. That was what Gregory called our home, speaking the words with the kind of reverent pride usually reserved for ancestral castles and historic landmarks. 22 rooms spread across 15,000 square feet of pristine luxury. 7 bathrooms clad in Italian marble. A pool house bigger than the cramped apartment where I had grown up with my father after my mother died. Gardens that sprawled across 3 acres, meticulously maintained by a team of professional landscapers. A circular driveway with a fountain in the center that probably cost more than most people's houses. Gregory had told me the story of this house dozens of times, always with the same rehearsed reverence, always with the same carefully constructed details. His grandfather built it in 1962, he would say, gazing up at the facade with what I now recognize as performed nostalgia. He made his fortune in railroad investments and wanted to create a legacy that would last for generations. My grandmother planted every rose in that garden with her own hands. That portrait above the fireplace is my great-uncle, a railroad tycoon who helped build the transcontinental lines. 4 generations of Ashfords had lived within these walls, he told me, and now I was part of that legacy, that noble tradition of wealth and privilege. I believed every word. Why would I not? Who lies about something as verifiable as family history and property ownership? Who invents an entire ancestry complete with railroad tycoons and rose-planting grandmothers? Gregory Ashford, that is who. The truth was simpler and sadder and infinitely more pathetic than the elaborate fiction he had constructed. Gregory rented this mansion through a property management company called Morrison Property Partners, $15,000 a month. He had been doing so for 5 years, ever since he decided he needed an impressive address to match the impressive lies he told about his business success. He had never met the actual owner, never even knew the owner's name, never bothered to look closely at the paperwork beyond signing his name on the lease agreement. And here's the thing that still makes me laugh out loud whenever I think about it, even now, even after everything. The owner's name was printed clearly on every single lease document, every property record, every piece of paper Gregory had ever signed related to this house. Harold Morrison, my father's real name, the name he never used, that I had only seen on my parents' marriage certificate and his driver's license. Gregory Ashford built his entire fake empire on the foundation of my father's real one. He played lord of the manor in a house owned by the quiet man in flannel shirts, whom he had mocked and dismissed as nobody at his own wedding. And he never once bothered to look closely enough to notice the connection. But I did not know any of this. Yet as I walked through those rooms that morning, practicing my smile for the dinner party, planning how I would tell my husband about our baby, I was still operating under the assumption that my marriage could be saved, that Gregory was fundamentally a good man who had made mistakes, that love could conquer deception if I just tried hard enough. I would learn the truth soon enough, and when I did, everything would change. I spent 2 full hours getting ready for that dinner party, longer than I had spent preparing for anything in months. I chose a blue dress that cost $800, a beautiful silk creation that hugged my figure and made my eyes look almost luminous in the right light. Gregory had once told me that blue was his favorite color on me, back in the early days when he still bothered to notice what I was wearing, back when his compliments felt genuine rather than obligatory. I did my hair the way he liked it, swept up in an elegant twist that exposed my neck. I applied my makeup with painstaking care, going for a natural look that still managed to highlight my best features. I practiced my smile in the mirror over and over until it looked almost real, until even I could almost believe I was happy. I had the affair photographs in my purse, tucked into a side pocket where I could feel their presence like a wound. The financial documents, too, folded and refolded until the creases were permanent. But I was not going to use them. Not yet. Not tonight. Tonight, I was going to give my husband one more chance. I was going to tell him about our baby and pray that it would remind him why he had married me in the first place, that it would awaken whatever love still existed somewhere beneath the coldness and the lies. God, I was naive, so trusting, so hopeful, so desperately committed to believing in a man who did not deserve an ounce of my faith. The guests started arriving around 7 o'clock, just as the sun was setting and the mansion's exterior lights were flickering on to illuminate the facade in warm golden hues. Luxury cars lined the circular driveway like an automotive fashion show. Valets in crisp uniforms parked Porsches and Mercedes and Bentleys and a few exotic imports I could not even identify. 150 people poured through our front doors over the course of an hour, each one dressed in the finest clothes money could buy, each one greeting Gregory with the kind of fawning admiration reserved for powerful men. Business associates from Ashford Technologies, most of whom I had met at similar events, but whose names I could never quite remember. Society people whose last names appeared on hospital wings and university buildings. Local politicians who smiled too widely and laughed too loudly at jokes that were not funny. The kind of crowd Gregory loved to impress, loved to manipulate, loved to watch as they competed for his attention and approval. I played the perfect hostess, just as I had been trained to do over 3 years of these elaborate performances. Greeting guests at the door with warmth I did not feel. Directing the catering staff with quiet authority. Making sure champagne glasses were never empty and appetizer trays were always full. Smiling until my face ached from the effort of pretending everything was fine. That was my job in this marriage. Look pretty, be pleasant, make Gregory look good, never complain, never question, never reveal the cracks in the perfect facade we presented to the world. Then Iris arrived, and my carefully constructed composure nearly shattered into 1,000 pieces. She walked through our front door like she owned the place, her stride confident and unhurried, her posture radiating the kind of supreme self-assurance that comes from knowing you have already won. She was wearing a white dress that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe combined, a sleek designer creation that clung to her curves and left little to the imagination. Her blonde hair was swept up in an elegant twist similar to mine, as if she were mocking me with the imitation. Her sharp predator eyes scanned the room like a hawk, searching for prey, before landing on me with what I can only describe as triumphant amusement. And around her elegant throat, catching the light from the chandeliers above, was my pearl necklace, the one Gregory had given me for our first anniversary, when he still pretended to love me, when he still made an effort to mark occasions that mattered. The necklace that had gone missing 3 months ago, that I had searched for everywhere, that I had assumed I had somehow lost despite my careful nature. She was wearing my necklace, my anniversary gift, my pearls that my husband had stolen from my jewelry box and given to his mistress. And she smiled at me as she walked past, a smile that was daring me to say something, daring me to make a scene in front of all these important people. She wanted me to lose control. She wanted everyone to see me as the crazy, jealous wife while she played the innocent victim. I did not give her the satisfaction. I smiled back, my hostess' smile firmly in place, and offered her a glass of champagne from a passing tray. I acted like I did not notice the pearls gleaming against her skin, like I did not recognize them, like my heart was not breaking with each beat. That was my mistake. Iris took my silence as weakness, as submission, as confirmation that she had already won and I was too defeated to even fight. And in a way, she was right. Dinner was excruciating, one of the longest hours of my entire life. I sat at one end of the enormously long, formal table, the position traditionally reserved for the lady of the house, while Gregory held court at the other end, a full 30 feet away. Iris sat at his right hand, in the seat of honor that should have been occupied by his wife, that should have been mine. Throughout the entire 4-course meal, Gregory ignored me completely. Not a single glance in my direction, not a single word addressed to me, not even the courtesy of acknowledging my existence. But Iris received his full attention, his full charm, his full performance of the devoted lover. He laughed at her jokes, throwing his head back with exaggerated amusement at comments that were not particularly clever. He touched her arm repeatedly, casual, intimate gestures that sent clear messages to everyone watching. He whispered in her ear while I watched from the other end of the table, close enough to see but too far to hear, and she giggled like a schoolgirl being courted. He made no effort whatsoever to hide his attention, his affection, his preference for her over me. The other guests noticed. Of course they noticed. How could they not? Eyes darted back and forth between me and the couple at the other end of the table, watching this drama unfold like spectators at a tennis match. Whispers circulated from guest to guest, spreading like wildfire through dry grass. I saw phones come out under the table, thumbs typing rapid texts to friends who were not present, spreading the gossip in real time. Everyone at that table knew my husband was sleeping with another woman. They had probably known for months, had probably been gossiping about it at other parties I was not invited to, had probably pitied me behind my back while smiling to my face. I was the last to know. The punchline to a joke everyone else had been laughing at for months. Dessert was served, a beautiful chocolate mousse that our chef had spent hours perfecting, that I could not taste at all because my mouth was filled with the bitterness of betrayal. My hand shook so badly I could barely hold my fork, so I kept them hidden in my lap where no one could see my distress. Then Gregory stood up, and my world ended. He tapped his crystal champagne glass with a silver fork, and the room fell silent immediately. All eyes turned toward him with the kind of attention he loved and cultivated. He smiled his magazine cover smile, the one he had practiced in mirrors until it was perfect, and cleared his throat dramatically. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," he said, his voice carrying easily across the silent room. "You are all important to me, business partners, friends, People who have watched Ashford Technologies grow from a humble dream in my garage to the empire it is today. Polite applause rippled through the assembled guests, the kind of trained response wealthy people give when expected. Gregory continued, his confidence building with each word. But tonight is not about business. Tonight is about truth, about authenticity, about finally being honest with the people I care about. My heart began to race, pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. For one insane, hope-filled moment, I thought he was going to apologize. I thought he had realized his mistakes and was going to announce, in front of all these witnesses, that he was recommitting to our marriage. Maybe he had somehow found out about the pregnancy. Maybe this was his way of making things right, of showing me that our family mattered more than his affair. For 3 years, Gregory said, his voice dropping into a register of carefully performed sincerity, I have been living a lie, pretending to be happy, pretending to be fulfilled, pretending that my marriage was something it never was. The silence in that dining room became absolute. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering, could hear the blood rushing through my veins, could hear the tiny sounds of guests shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Tonight, in front of all of you, I want to announce that I am filing for divorce. The word hit me like a physical blow to the chest. Divorce. I felt myself crumbling from the inside out, felt my vision narrowing to a tunnel focused only on my husband's cruel, handsome face. The room erupted in gasps. Someone dropped a fork with a clatter. I heard whispered exclamations of shock, though whether genuine or performed, I could not tell. Gregory walked around the table toward Iris, his movements confident and rehearsed. He had planned this, choreographed it. Every step, every gesture, every word had been designed for maximum dramatic impact. He took Iris's perfectly manicured hand, pulled her gracefully to her feet, and wrapped his arm around her waist with possessive intimacy. They stood there together, beautiful and triumphant, framed against the backdrop of the dining room, where I had hosted dozens of dinner parties, where I had played the perfect wife while my marriage crumbled to dust around me. And I want to introduce you to the woman I love, Gregory announced, his voice ringing with false sincerity. The woman I should have waited for, the woman who understands me in ways my wife never could. Iris Montgomery. Iris beamed like a bride at her wedding, pressing herself against my husband's side, looking at me with pure triumph blazing in her sharp eyes. My pearl necklace, my anniversary pearls, caught the light and threw tiny rainbows across the white tablecloth. The room spun around me like I was trapped on a carnival ride. I heard sounds, gasps, whispers, someone laughing nervously, cutlery being set down, but they seemed far away, muffled, like I was hearing them from underwater. I tried to stand, but my legs refused to cooperate. I tried to speak, but my voice had abandoned me. I could not breathe, could not move, could not think. Gregory, I finally managed to whisper, my voice barely audible, even to myself. Please, can we talk about this privately? He looked at me then, finally acknowledging my presence, and his eyes were cold. Colder than I had ever seen them, colder than ice, colder than the grave where our marriage was already being buried. Talk about what, Josephine? His voice was hard, dismissive, the voice of a man speaking to someone beneath his notice. There is nothing to discuss. I have made my decision. Honestly, I should have done this years ago. I have been miserable with you since our honeymoon ended. Iris walked toward me, champagne glass in hand, her heels clicking against the marble floor with each deliberate step. Her voice dripped with false sympathy and genuine cruelty. Oh, honey, she said, looking down at me with theatrical pity. Did you really think a man like Gregory would stay with someone so ordinary? Forever? You were a phase, sweetheart. A starter wife, a placeholder. You kept the seat warm while he waited for something better. She gestured to herself with a theatrical flourish, my pearls swinging with the movement. You are looking at better. I tried to stand again, and this time my body obeyed, though my chair scraped loudly against the floor with the graceless movement. Every face in that room was turned toward me now. Some looked horrified, their mouths hanging open in shock. Some looked fascinated, leaning forward in their seats like this was the most entertaining dinner theater they had ever witnessed. Several were holding up their phones, recording everything, capturing my humiliation for posterity. "Gregory, please," I said, my voice trembling with desperation and unshed tears. "After everything we have been through together, after 3 years, I thought you loved me. I thought we were building something together." "Security," Gregory said, cutting me off like I had not spoken at all. 2 guards appeared behind my chair, as if they had been waiting for this signal, as if this moment had been rehearsed. Large men in dark suits with expressionless faces and hands like hammers. Their grip closed around my arms before I could react. "Remove her from my house," Gregory commanded, his voice carrying the authority of a king dismissing a servant. "She has 10 minutes to pack her personal belongings. Everything else stays. The jewelry, the clothes, everything I paid for. That is mine." "You cannot do this," I gasped as the guards lifted me from my chair. My feet barely touched the ground as they began dragging me backward. "Gregory, I am your wife. You cannot just throw me out like garbage." "Not for long," he replied with a dismissive wave of his hand. "My lawyers will be in touch." The guards dragged me through the dining room, past all those watching faces that would haunt my nightmares for years to come. My dress caught on a chair leg and tore at the hem, but they did not stop. They just kept pulling me toward the stairs, toward the bedroom, toward the end of everything I had known. I looked around desperately as I was hauled past the guests. Surely someone would help. Surely someone would speak up, would intervene, would say that this was wrong. These were people I had welcomed into my home, people I had served drinks to and made conversation with and remembered birthdays for. But no one moved. No one spoke. Some guests looked away in obvious embarrassment, unable to meet my eyes. Others watched with open fascination, like they were witnessing a car crash in slow motion and could not look away. A man near the fireplace was actually laughing, his florid face twisted with cruel amusement. The last thing I saw before they dragged me around the corner was Maggie, our head housekeeper, standing in the doorway to the kitchen, with tears streaming silently down her weathered cheeks. She was holding her phone, but she was not recording me like everyone else. Her fingers were moving rapidly across the screen, typing something with urgent intensity. I did not know it then, but she was texting my father. "It is happening. He is throwing her out. Come now." The guards deposited me in the master bedroom, our bedroom, and stood by the door like sentinels while I fell to my knees on the plush carpet. 10 minutes, one of them said, without emotion. "Pack what is yours." What was mine? What was mine after 3 years of marriage, 3 years of being Mrs. Gregory Ashford, 3 years of losing myself piece by piece until I no longer knew who I was without him. I crawled to my feet and began throwing clothes into a suitcase with hands that would not stop shaking. Random things, whatever my fingers touched first. A sweater I hated, jeans that did not fit anymore. A dress still wrapped in dry cleaning plastic. Nothing matched. Nothing made sense. I opened my jewelry box, and my fingers found the pregnancy test, still hidden beneath where my grandmother's pearls used to rest before Gregory stole them for his mistress. I slipped it into my pocket. This proof of the life growing inside me, this secret I had planned to share with joy and was now hiding with desperation. I thought about screaming it at the guards, at the walls, at the whole house. I am pregnant. I am carrying his child. You cannot do this to a pregnant woman. But even in my shattered state, some survival instinct held my tongue. Whatever happened next, my baby would never know their father had thrown their mother out like trash. I would protect my child from this truth, even if it meant keeping the pregnancy secret, even if it meant suffering this humiliation alone. The only thing I took that truly mattered was a framed photograph of my mother from my nightstand. She was smiling in the picture, young and beautiful and full of life before the cancer took her when I was 15. I held the frame against my chest like armor. When I came back down those grand stairs for the last time, clutching my pathetic suitcase and my mother's photograph, the party had resumed as if nothing had happened. Music played from the hidden speakers. People drank champagne and laughed at jokes and pretended they had not just witnessed a woman being destroyed. Gregory and Iris stood at the bottom of the staircase, kissing performatively, his hands tangled in her blonde hair, putting on a show to ensure I saw exactly what was replacing me. When they finally broke apart, Iris looked up at me and smiled her predator smile. "Thanks for keeping the bed warm, sweetheart," she said, her voice carrying across the foyer. "I will take it from here." Someone laughed. Several people actually applauded, like they were congratulating Iris on her victory, like destroying a marriage was some kind of achievement to be celebrated. I walked through that crowd with my head held high, refusing to cry, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. One foot in front of the other, through the foyer where I had greeted guests 1,000 times, past the people with their phones still raised, out the front door that I had walked through as a bride 3 years ago. The last thing I heard as the heavy door closed behind me was Gregory's voice, loud and jubilant, calling for more champagne. Outside, it had started to rain. The iron gates of the Ashford estate closed behind me with a heavy clang that sounded like the lid of a coffin. Through them, I could see the mansion blazing with light, could hear the muffled sounds of celebration continuing without me. And then I was outside, alone, in the dark and the cold November rain, holding one small suitcase with everything I had left in the world. I sat down on the wet curb and let myself shatter. I sat on that wet curb for exactly 23 minutes. I know because I watched the time on my phone, counting each minute as it passed, waiting for something to change, waiting for Gregory to come out and say it was all a terrible joke, waiting for someone, anyone, to realize that what had just happened was wrong. No one came. I had $127 in my personal bank account, the remains of my secret savings after I had paid the private investigator. I had no job, no income of my own, nothing that belonged to me except the clothes in my suitcase and the baby growing in my belly that no one knew about. My phone was nearly dead, and I was sitting in a rainstorm outside a mansion that had never been my home, married to a man who had never truly been my husband. With numb fingers, I dialed the only number that mattered. My father answered on the second ring. "Josephine," he said, his voice immediate and alert, even though it was nearly 11 at night. I tried to speak, but all that came out were sobs, ugly, gasping sounds that tore from my chest like something dying. "I know, sweetheart," my father said, his voice steady as a rock in a storm. I know. Take a breath. Are you hurt, Dad?" I managed to choke out between sobs. He threw me out, in front of everyone. "I have nowhere to go." "Listen to me carefully," he said, and there was something in his voice I had never heard before. A quiet command, an authority that seemed completely at odds with the humble man I had known my whole life. "I need you to stay exactly where you are. A car is coming, a black sedan, license plate starting with M. The driver's name is Thomas. He will take you somewhere safe." "Dad, I do not understand. How do you know what happened? How do you have a car coming? You do not have to understand right now. You just have to trust me. Can you do that, sweetheart? I thought about my father, Walter Callahan, who had raised me alone after my mother died, who had worked long hours at a job he never talked about to put me through college, who drove a 15-year-old pickup truck and bought his clothes at Goodwill and lived in a 900-square-foot cottage. How did this man have a private car service that could reach me in minutes? Yes, I whispered. I trust you. Good girl. The car will be there in 8 minutes. I will explain everything soon, but not tonight. Tonight you just need to rest. Dad, how did you know what happened? How did you know before I called? 8 minutes, sweetheart. I love you. He hung up, leaving me with more questions than answers. The car arrived in exactly 8 minutes, just as he had promised. A sleek black sedan that looked like it cost more than my father's entire house. The driver, Thomas, was a professional in a dark suit who treated me like I was somebody important. He held an umbrella over my head as I climbed into the leather back seat. He handed me a warm blanket without being asked. He drove me to the Whitmore Hotel downtown, one of the most exclusive addresses in the city. When I tried to check in, soaking wet and obviously broken, the receptionist did not bat an eye. Mrs. Callahan, she said with a warm smile, your suite is ready. Your bill has been taken care of. Would you like some tea sent up? I did not ask who was paying. I did not ask how long I could stay. I did not ask any of the 1,000 questions crowding my exhausted mind. I just went upstairs to a suite that was bigger than my first apartment, took a shower so hot it nearly scalded me, and sat on a bed that cost more per night than most people earn in a week. I pulled out the pregnancy test and stared at it for a long time. Positive. Still positive. My whole world had been demolished, but these 2 pink lines remained unchanged, undeniable. I was going to be a mother, and the father of my child had just called me worthless in front of 200 people, had me dragged across the floor like garbage, had replaced me with a woman wearing my own pearls. I put my hand on my stomach and made a promise. I do not know how yet, baby, I whispered into the empty suite, but I am going to protect you. I am going to give you a better life than this, whatever it takes. The next morning, I went to a private clinic, one of the addresses on the list of resources for women in difficult situations that I had found in my purse, tucked there by someone, probably Maggie, at some point during my ordeal. A kind female doctor, with gentle hands and understanding eyes, confirmed what I already knew. The blood test confirms it, she said. You are approximately 8 weeks pregnant. Everything looks healthy so far. Thank you, I said, the words feeling inadequate. Mrs. Ashford, I have to ask, do you have support? A safe place to stay? I thought about the hotel suite, about my father's mysterious resources, about all the things that did not add up. I am working on it, I said. She gave me a list of resources for women escaping domestic situations, prenatal vitamins, and an appointment for a follow-up ultrasound. I walked out of that clinic, clutching the first image of my baby, a tiny blob on a black and white printout that somehow looked more real and more important than anything else in my life. Sitting in the parking lot afterward, I made a decision. I was not going to be a victim waiting for someone to save me. I was not going to collapse into helplessness and despair. I was a trained paralegal. I had spent years at one of the most prestigious law firms in the city before Gregory convinced me to quit. I understood contracts and evidence and legal strategy. He might have taken everything else from me, but he could not take my mind. It was time to fight back. I returned to the hotel and began researching with the methodical focus that had made me good at my job. Gregory had always told me the mansion was inherited, his grandfather's estate held in a family trust. But now I had every reason to doubt every word he had ever spoken. Public property records are exactly that, public. Anyone with an internet connection and basic research skills can access them. And I had more than basic skills. It took me 2 hours of searching through county assessor databases and corporate registrations, but I found it. The mansion was owned by something called Morrison Property Partners, LLC. Not an Ashford, not a family trust. A property management company. Gregory did not own that house. He had never owned it. He had been renting it for years while telling everyone it was his ancestral estate. My heart pounded as I dug deeper, trying to find out who was behind Morrison Property Partners. But I hit a wall. The company was legitimate, but opaque, wrapped in layers of corporate structure designed to protect the actual owner's identity. Shell corporations nested inside shell corporations. Without a court order or inside information, I could not find out who really owned that house. But it did not matter yet. What mattered was that I had proof Gregory had lied. His entire Ashford estate story was complete fiction. And that lie might be the key to everything. I called Helen Price, my old colleague from the law firm. She was the one friend Gregory had not managed to completely separate me from, though not for lack of trying. A senior paralegal in her mid-40s, practical and fierce and loyal, in ways I had not fully appreciated until now. "Jesus Christ, Josie," she said when she answered my call. "It is all over social media. Are you okay?" "No," I admitted, "but I will be. Helen, I need your help. I need access to legal research databases, and I need the name of a good divorce attorney who will work on contingency." "Done," she said, without a moment's hesitation. "What are you planning?" "I am planning to fight. That is my girl. Tell me everything." I told her about the affair, about the company's debt, about the rented mansion that Gregory claimed was his ancestral home. "Send me what you have," Helen said when I finished. "I will dig from my end." And Josie? That bastard picked the wrong woman to cross. While I was researching and planning, the videos were spreading across the internet like a plague. Someone had edited the dinner party footage into a highlight reel designed for maximum viral impact. My face, when Gregory made his announcement, frozen in a moment of absolute devastation. The moment Iris smiled at me, with my own pearls around her throat. The guards dragging me across the marble floor while my dress tore and my dignity shattered. Gregory and Iris kissing at the bottom of the stairs while I was led away like a criminal. Millionaire CEO divorces, wife at dinner party. That was the headline everywhere. 500,000 views before morning, 1 million by noon. The comments section was a cesspool of cruelty. Pathetic. She must have known. No man leaves a wife for no reason. Gold digger got what she deserved. Look at her face when she realizes it is over. Priceless. Thousands of people who had never met me, who knew nothing about my marriage or my life, decided I was the villain of my own humiliation. They made up stories about affairs I never had, about money I had supposedly stolen, about abuse I had supposedly committed. They invented reasons to justify what Gregory had done because the alternative, that a man could destroy his wife for no reason other than cruelty, was too uncomfortable to accept. But I did not have time for self-pity. I had work to do. 1 week after the dinner party, Gregory launched his counterattack. Legal documents arrived at my hotel, delivered by a courier, who made me sign for them like they were a gift rather than a weapon. His lawyer was Marcus Webb, known throughout the legal community as the Shark, the most aggressive divorce attorney in the state. Gregory claimed I had contributed nothing to the marriage, that all assets were his separate property, that I was entitled to nothing at all. But that was not the worst part. Gregory alleged infidelity. He claimed I had been having affairs throughout our marriage. His evidence was a series of photographs showing me meeting with an unidentified man multiple times over the past month. The man was my private investigator. Gregory had somehow discovered that I was investigating him, and he had twisted it into proof of my supposed cheating. He was using the evidence I had gathered to catch him as a weapon against me. It was brilliant in its cruelty. It was evil in its execution, and it might actually work. Then he froze the accounts. Our joint savings, gone. The credit card he had given me for household expenses, canceled. Even the hotel room, which I discovered had been paid through some account connected to his business, was suddenly my responsibility. I had to leave the Whitmore that same night. I could not afford even one more night at the standard rate with my dwindling savings. That is how I ended up at Harbor House, a women's shelter in a modest brick building in a part of town Gregory would never have deigned to visit. I walked through those doors clutching my suitcase, the same suitcase I had packed in 10 desperate minutes a week before, and I saw my reflection in the eyes of the other women there. We were all the same, all victims of men who had promised to love us and then destroyed us instead. All statistics in a story as old as time. I was assigned a narrow bed in a room with 3 other displaced women. The sheets had been washed so many times they were thin and soft, and the pillow smelled faintly of industrial detergent. Around me, in the darkness, I could hear the sounds of other women crying quietly, trying not to wake their neighbors. I was not special, I was not different. I was just another woman who had trusted the wrong man and paid the price. And for the first time, lying in that shelter bed, with my hand pressed against my stomach, I genuinely understood that I might lose this fight. Gregory had money, lawyers, media sympathy, and the power to shape any narrative he chose. I had nothing but my wits and my will, and a secret growing inside me. Almost nothing, I whispered to my baby in the dark. I have you. And that is almost everything. I called my father every day from the shelter, stepping outside into the cold courtyard to have conversations I did not want anyone else to hear. He always answered on the first ring, no matter what time I called. He always asked if I was safe, if I was eating, if I was taking care of myself. He always told me he loved me, but whenever I asked for help, whenever I asked about the mysterious car in the hotel suite, and how he had known what was happening before I even called him, he gave me the same frustrating answer. Not yet, sweetheart. Trust me, not yet. Dad, I am in a shelter, I said one night, frustration and desperation boiling over into anger. I have no money. Gregory is claiming I cheated on him. His lawyers are painting me as a gold digger who got what she deserved. I need help. I know, he said, his voice maddeningly calm, and everything will make sense soon. But I need you to be strong a little longer. Can you do that for me, sweetheart? You keep saying that, but I do not understand why. I do not understand anything anymore. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and when my father spoke again, his voice carried a weight I had never heard before. Josephine, I have never let you down. Not once in your entire life, have I? I thought about my childhood, after my mother died, the way he had held our small family together, through grief and hardship, the extra shifts he worked to pay for my education, the birthday cakes he learned to bake because Mom was not there to do it anymore, the way he had shown up every single time for every recital and graduation and moment that mattered. No, I admitted quietly. You never have, then trust me now, 2 more weeks. That is all I am asking. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to demand answers. I wanted to shake him until the truth fell out. But he was right. In 32 years, my father had never broken a promise to me, never let me down, never given me a single reason to doubt him. So I chose to trust him, even when every logical part of my brain was screaming that nothing made sense. 2 days later, I received a text from an unknown number asking me to meet at a coffee shop near the shelter. When I arrived, wrapped in my inadequate coat against the November chill, Maggie Brennan was waiting in a back booth. She looked older than I remembered, her face lined with worry, her eyes constantly scanning the room as if expecting Gregory to burst through the door at any moment. "I cannot stay long," she said before I even sat down. "If Gregory finds out I am meeting you, I will lose my job. Worse than that, he has already threatened to destroy anyone who helps you." "Maggie," I said, sliding into the booth across from her. "What is going on?" "You texted my father the night I was thrown out. I saw you typing on your phone while they were dragging me past. How do you even have his number?" She was quiet for a long moment, her weathered hands wrapped around a coffee cup that had gone cold. "Josephine, there are things I cannot tell you. Not yet. I made a promise to someone, and I have never broken a promise in my life. But I can give you one piece of advice." She slid an envelope across the table toward me. "Gregory keeps a safe in his study. The combination is his mother's birthday. October 14th, 1959, 10/14/59. If you could get inside that house, get inside that safe, you would find everything you need." "How am I supposed to get inside?" "He has security systems, guards, cameras everywhere. I change the alarm codes every month. This month's code is inside that envelope. The back door that opens from the kitchen hallway, the one the staff uses, that is the blind spot in the camera coverage. The security guards take their break at 10:30 every night and are usually gone for 45 minutes. Maggie, I do not understand. Why are you helping me? Why did you text my father?" She stood up abruptly, pulling her coat tight around her. "I have worked in that house for 22 years, Josephine, longer than Gregory Ashford has been there. I know who the real owners are, and when you find out the truth, everything will make sense." She walked out without another word, leaving me with an envelope full of alarm codes and more questions than I had started with. Real owners, plural. 22 years, longer than Gregory had even lived in that house. Maggie knew something enormous, something that connected to my father and his mysterious resources, and everything that did not add up, and she could not tell me. But she could give me the tools to find out myself. It took me 3 days to plan the break-in. I studied everything I knew about the mansion's layout and security. Gregory attended his country club every Thursday evening for dinner and poker, never returning before midnight at the earliest. The house would have minimal staff on duty. Maggie had given me the alarm codes and the guard's schedule. I would have a window of maybe 2 hours if everything went according to plan. I knew I was risking everything. If I got caught, if Gregory found out I had broken into the house, his lawyers would have a field day. Breaking and entering, criminal trespass. The sympathetic narrative I was trying to build would be destroyed. But I was already being destroyed day by day. My reputation was in tatters, my finances were non-existent, and my ex-husband was systematically dismantling every option I had left. At least this way, I had a chance. At least this way, I was fighting back, instead of waiting passively for the end. Thursday night, 10:30. I approached the mansion through the garden, dressed in dark clothes I had bought at a thrift store, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I knew this property intimately. 3 years of living here had taught me every pathway, every camera angle, every blind spot in the security coverage. I knew which motion sensors were calibrated too sensitively and triggered false alarms from stray cats. I knew which doors stuck and which ones swung silently on well-oiled hinges. The side door opened into the kitchen hallway, just as Maggie had described. I punched in the alarm code with trembling fingers, watching the seconds tick down on my phone. The system beeped twice and disarmed. I had 90 seconds to reach the study before the secondary system activated. I moved through the dark house like a ghost, past the foyer where I had been dragged, through the dining room where I had been humiliated. Every room held memories that clawed at me as I passed. The chair where Gregory had sat when he proposed. The corner where we had decorated our first Christmas tree together. The spot where I had stood so many times, playing the perfect hostess while my marriage crumbled around me. Gregory's study was at the end of the hallway on the main floor, a heavy oak door that had always been locked, that I had never been permitted to enter. Business documents, he would say whenever I asked. Sensitive financial information. You would not understand it anyway. The key was where Maggie said it would be, hidden on top of the door frame under a thin layer of dust. I fitted it into the lock with shaking hands and pushed the door open. The study was exactly what I had imagined, and nothing like I had expected. Dark wood paneling that absorbed the moonlight streaming through tall windows. Leather chairs arranged around a massive desk. Framed photographs covering one wall, showing Gregory shaking hands with important people, Gregory accepting awards, Gregory looking successful and confident and completely in control. And in the corner, behind a painting of some generic hunting scene, a wall safe built into the wall. 10/14/59. His mother's birthday. Catherine Ashford. The woman who had called my father the help at our wedding, who had treated me like an unwelcome guest for 3 years of marriage. The safe clicked open on the first try. Inside, I found everything. Stacks of documents, USB drives, bundles of cash and rubber bands, a handgun I did not want to think about, and a folder marked Lease Agreement, Confidential. I pulled out the folder and began reading by the light of my phone, my hands shaking so badly the pages rustled like leaves in a wind. Lease agreement for this property, $15,000 per month. Tenant, Gregory William Ashford. Landlord, Morrison Surround Property. Partners, LLC. Managing agent, Daniel Reeves, Esquire. But that was not what stopped my heart. I flipped to the signature page, to the line where the actual property owner had signed their name. Harold Morrison. I stared at those 2 words until my vision blurred. Harold Morrison, my father's legal name, the name he never used, that appeared only on official documents, that I had seen exactly twice in my life, once on my parents' marriage certificate, once on his driver's license when I was 16 and learning to drive. My father owned this house. My father was Gregory's landlord. My father had been watching this whole charade the entire time. I photographed the lease agreement with trembling hands, then kept digging through the safe's contents. Each document was worse than the last. Financial records showing Ashford Technologies hemorrhaging money for years. Emails between Gregory and investors filled with lies and fabricated projections. A draft of a prenuptial agreement dated 3 years ago, before our wedding, that Gregory had never shown me because signing it would have required full financial disclosure of his actual situation. And at the bottom of the safe, hidden beneath everything else, a second phone. Gregory's secret phone. I turned it on and waited while it loaded. When the text messages appeared, my stomach lurched. Months of messages between Gregory and Iris, explicit photographs I did not want to see, and conversations that revealed everything. Cannot wait to be Mrs. Ashford, Iris had written 6 months ago. When are you getting rid of her? Soon, Gregory replied. I need to time it right. Make sure I keep everything in the divorce. She does not suspect anything. She is too stupid to suspect anything. That is why I married her. Easy to control, too trusting to question, too desperate for love to see what was right in front of her face, too stupid. That was what my husband thought of me. The man I had loved, the man whose child I was carrying, thought I was too stupid to notice his lies, too stupid to fight back, too stupid to matter. He was wrong. He was so incredibly wrong. I photographed everything, every document, every text, every piece of evidence. My phone's memory filled with proof of his fraud, his cruelty, his contempt. Then I heard it. A car in the driveway. Headlights sweeping across the study window. Gregory was home early. I had 90 seconds, maybe less, before Gregory came through the front door. My hands moved on autopilot, the muscle memory of 3 years as a paralegal taking over when my conscious mind was too terrified to function. I replaced the documents in the safe exactly as I had found them. I spun the dial to reset the combination. I pushed the hunting painting back into place. Then I ran. Through the study door, down the dark hallway, through the kitchen. I could hear the front door opening, hear Gregory's voice carrying through the house as he talked on his phone. I told her lawyer today, I do not care what she claims. She is not getting a single cent. Let her rot in that shelter. I slipped out the back door and into the garden, moving through shadows I knew by heart. My lungs burned. My legs trembled, but I did not stop until I had climbed the garden wall and dropped onto the sidewalk beyond. I sat behind a neighbor's manicured hedge for 10 minutes, gasping for breath, clutching my phone full of evidence against my chest like a talisman. I had everything. The proof that Gregory had been lying about owning the house. The financial documents showing his company was bankrupt. The text messages proving that my public humiliation had been planned for months. And the biggest secret of all. My father owned that mansion. My father was Harold Morrison, and Harold Morrison apparently owned half the commercial real estate in the city. Nothing I thought I knew was real. Nothing except the baby growing inside me. The next morning, I drove to my father's cottage, the modest little house where I had grown up after my mother died, where I had done homework at the kitchen table and learned to cook Thanksgiving dinner, and cried into my father's shoulder when my heart was broken for the first time. I pounded on the door until he opened it, my fist aching from the force of my knocking. He looked older than I remembered, tired in a way that went deeper than simple exhaustion, but he was not surprised to see me. His eyes held something that looked almost like relief. "You found it," he said simply. "How long?" I demanded. "How long have you known?" "Come inside, sweetheart. It is finally time to explain everything." He led me to the kitchen table, the same scarred wooden table where I had eaten breakfast every morning of my childhood, and he told me the truth. "My real name is Harold Walter Morrison," he said. "I built Morrison Properties starting in 1982, the year your mother and I got married. We were both young and ambitious, and convinced we could conquer the world together. By the time you were born, I owned 30 buildings. Today I own 47. That is impossible," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "We grew up in this cottage. You wore flannel shirts from Goodwill. You drove a truck older than me. You never had money for anything beyond necessities. All true," he said, "and all by choice." He pulled out a box from the closet I had never been allowed to open as a child, a cedar chest that my mother had brought to their marriage. Inside were old photographs, newspaper clippings, documents that rewrote everything I thought I knew about my family. A young version of my father in a hard hat at construction sites, pointing at blueprints, directing workers. Newspaper articles with headlines like, "Local developer transforms downtown and Morrison Properties announces major expansion." A photograph of my parents standing in front of a half-built mansion, their arms around each other, their faces bright with hope. The mansion, my mansion, Gregory's mansion. I built that house for your mother in 1985, my father said, his eyes filling with tears that he did not try to hide. We were going to move in on her 40th birthday. We had planned every detail together, the layout of the rooms, the garden where she wanted to plant roses, the nursery where we would put your crib. Then she got sick. Cancer. The same cancer that would eventually take her from me. It started growing just as our dream house was being finished. She died 3 months before her 40th birthday. And I could not live there without her. I could not walk through those rooms knowing she would never see them. His voice broke, and he paused to compose himself. So I stayed here, in the cottage where we had started our life together. The mansion sat empty for years. Eventually, I started renting it out, anonymously, through the property management company. It was easier than selling it, easier than admitting she was really gone. That part of my life was over. Gregory has been renting Mom's house this whole time, the house you built for her, for 5 years. $15,000 a month, which he has been late on more than once. He never knew who owned it, never cared enough to find out. He just saw a big, impressive house he could use to impress people, and he took it without asking any questions. He took your house. He took your daughter, and he never even knew they were connected. My father nodded slowly. He signed lease documents with my name on them a dozen times. Harold Morrison, right there in black and white. He looked at it and saw nothing because he could not imagine that a man who dresses like I do, who drives what I drive, who lives how I live, could possibly matter. Why did you not tell me? I asked, the question that had been burning in my chest since I first saw his name on that lease. Before the wedding, before I gave up my career and my independence for a man who was renting your house and lying about it. Why did you let me marry him? My father was quiet for a long moment, staring at his weathered hands. Because you loved him, he finally said, and I hoped I was wrong about him. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the small garden where my mother had once grown tomatoes. When you were 29, you did not need my money. You had your own career, your own apartment, your own savings. You were building a life I was proud of. I wanted you to find love on your own terms. Real love. Not someone chasing an inheritance they did not know existed. Then Gregory came along, charming, successful, saying all the right things. I wanted to believe he was what you deserved, what you needed. But you did not believe it. I had doubts from the first time I met him, he admitted. So I investigated him, quietly. I have resources that you did not know about. I found the debt, the lies about the house, the cracks in his facade, but you were already engaged by then, already dreaming about your wedding, already so in love that you could not see what I could see. I made a choice, Josephine, maybe the wrong one. I decided to wait and watch, to let him prove himself one way or the other. And when he threw me out, I was ready. I have been ready for 3 years. Every piece of evidence I have gathered, every document, every witness, it is all prepared. I was just waiting for Gregory to show who he really was, waiting for him to make a move so egregious that no one could defend him. He turned to face me. Here is what is going to happen. I am going to evict Gregory from the mansion. 30 days notice, per the lease terms. His office is in Morrison Plaza, which I also own. That lease terminates too. His car is leased through a company where I am the primary investor. His country club membership, his yacht club, even the restaurant where he proposed to you. I sit on boards. I hold shares. I have influence in ways he never imagined. Gregory built his entire fake life on my real property, and I am going to pull every brick out from under him. He came to stand in front of me and took my hands in his. But Josephine, I want to be clear about something. This was always going to be your choice. I had the power to destroy Gregory at any time, but you had the right to decide when and how. That is why I waited. That is why I sent Maggie to help you find the evidence yourself, rather than just handing it to you. You did not need to be rescued, sweetheart. You needed to rescue yourself. And you did. The eviction day arrived like justice finally taking physical form. My father, an attorney named Daniel Reeves, who worked for Morrison Properties, 2 sheriff's deputies, and I pulled up to the mansion in a convoy of vehicles. As I looked through the car window at those iron gates, the same gates that had closed behind me in the rain, I felt something shift inside my chest. Not triumph exactly, something quieter, something that felt like the first breath after nearly drowning. Gregory opened the front door in a silk robe, coffee cup in hand, looking annoyed at the interruption to his morning routine. His expression shifted through several phases when he saw who was standing on his doorstep. Confusion first, then recognition, then contempt. "Josephine," he said with a sneer. "Come to beg? I told my lawyers absolutely no settlement. You get nothing." "Mr. Ashford," Daniel Reeves stepped forward, his voice carrying the weight of legal authority. "My name is Daniel Reeves. I represent Morrison Property Partners, the owner of this property. You are being served with an eviction notice." Gregory actually laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the marble foyer behind him. "Eviction? From my own house? This is my grandfather's estate. It has been in my family for 4 generations. You have the wrong address." Daniel handed him a thick envelope of documents. "This property has never been owned by anyone named Ashford. You have been renting it for 5 years through our property management company. The owner has elected to terminate your lease effective immediately. You have 30 days to vacate the premises." Gregory's face went through a remarkable transformation as he flipped through the pages. The color drained from his skin. His hands began to tremble. His smug confidence crumbled like a sandcastle hit by a wave. "This is a mistake," he said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "There must be some error in the paperwork." "No mistake," my father said, stepping forward into the light. "I should know. I am the owner." Gregory stared at him, at the weathered old man in flannel and worn jeans, the man he had mocked at his own wedding, the man he had called nobody, and the help. "You?" he whispered. "That is impossible. You are just a retired property manager. You do not own anything." "I am Harold Morrison," my father said, and his quiet voice carried more power than Gregory's bluster ever had. "I built this house in 1985 for my wife, your mother-in-law, the woman you never bothered to learn anything about. I own Morrison Properties, Morrison Plaza, and about 45 other commercial buildings in this city, including the one where your office is located." Gregory's coffee cup slipped from his fingers and shattered on the marble floor. He did not seem to notice. "Your office lease is also terminated," my father continued, "along with your parking space at the Morrison Garage, your country club membership, which operates on property I hold the note on, your car lease, through a company where I am the primary investor." He stepped closer to Gregory, and for the first time, I saw my husband flinch away from someone he had always considered beneath him. "You called my daughter worthless. You dragged her across my floors. You threw her out of my house and left her in the rain while you celebrated with champagne. Now you are going to learn what worthless really means." Movement on the staircase behind Gregory caught my attention. Iris appeared at the top of the stairs, wrapped in a silk robe identical to Gregory's, her hair mussed from sleep. "Gregory, what is going on? Who are these people?" She descended the stairs and saw the eviction notices. The sheriff's deputies, my father's cold smile of satisfaction. "Gregory, tell me this is some kind of joke." "Iris," Gregory stammered, Just let me handle this. There has been some misunderstanding. Iris grabbed the documents from his shaking hands and began reading. Her perfectly made-up face went pale beneath its careful layers. You do not own this house. You have been renting. You told me this was your family's ancestral estate. You told me you were worth millions. It is complicated, Gregory started. Complicated? Iris's voice rose to a shriek. You are broke. Your company is failing. Your house is rented. Your car is probably leased. Everything you told me was a lie. She was already moving, shoving past Gregory to run up the stairs. I could hear her throwing things into luggage, drawers slamming, her voice carrying curses through the house. She reappeared 5 minutes later with 2 designer suitcases and a purse bulging with whatever valuables she had managed to grab. Iris, wait, Gregory pleaded. We can work this out. She stopped at the door and looked at him with pure contempt. I did not sign up for broke, Gregory. I do not do broke. I do not do liars. And I certainly do not do losers. She paused and looked at me, something flickering in her eyes that might have been respect or might have been fear. Good luck with him. He is your problem now. She walked out without another word, and I never saw Iris Montgomery again. At least, not the triumphant, pearl-wearing version who had smiled at my humiliation. The woman I would encounter later was someone else entirely. Gregory stood in the foyer of the house he had never owned, surrounded by evidence of his lies, watching his mistress abandon him without a backward glance. I thought that was victory. I thought we had won. I was so naive. The worst was still coming. 1 week after the eviction notice was served, Gregory held a press conference. I watched it on television from my father's cottage. Helen sitting beside me, Daniel Reeves pacing behind us. Gregory stood at a podium in a hotel conference room, looking devastated and humble, and nothing like the arrogant man who had thrown me out. He dabbed at his eyes with a handkerchief. His voice trembled with manufactured emotion. I am here today to set the record straight, he said. Over the past week, terrible lies have been spread about me, about my company, my home, my character. But the truth is far simpler and sadder. My wife, Josephine, was having an affair. I have evidence. When I discovered her betrayal, I made the painful decision to end our marriage. I was emotional. I handled it badly in public, in front of friends. I deeply regret that. But what has happened since is far worse. My wife and her father have conspired to destroy me. They have used their hidden wealth and connections to attack my business, my reputation, my entire life. They have tried to paint me as a fraud when I am the victim. He held up documents that looked official and damning. The truth is that I rented my family home temporarily due to financial difficulties. Difficulties caused by my wife's excessive spending and the stress of her betrayal. I am not a fraud. I am not a liar. I am a man who loved too much and trusted the wrong person. He spun everything, every single fact, twisted into a different story. The mansion was temporarily rented due to financial stress I had supposedly caused. The affair evidence was reframed as my meetings with the private investigator, proof of my supposed infidelity. The eviction was portrayed as a vindictive attack by my secretly wealthy father against a self-made man who had the audacity to divorce his daughter. And the media ate it up. Scorned wife's billionaire father wages war on innocent husband. That was the headline on 3 different news sites by noon. The comment sections filled with people calling me a gold digger, calling my father a bully, calling Gregory a victim of wealthy persecution. The paparazzi found us that same day. I could not leave the cottage without cameras in my face, reporters shouting questions, strangers on the street recognizing me and sharing their unsolicited opinions. Then the FBI arrived at my father's door with a warrant. Gregory had filed a countersuit. He was accusing my father of conspiracy to commit fraud, property manipulation, and coordinated harassment. The investigation would take months. Until it was resolved, we could not move forward with any of our plans, and that was when the stress finally broke me. I started bleeding in the middle of the night. Daniel rushed me to the hospital while my father followed in his truck, both of them breaking every speed limit to get me there. The doctor's face was grave when she came to talk to me. "Mrs. Ashford, the bleeding has stopped, and the baby's heartbeat is stable. But I have to be honest with you, this was a warning. The stress you are under is affecting your pregnancy. If you do not find a way to reduce it significantly, you could lose this baby." "What do I do?" I asked, tears streaming down my face. "Bed rest. No stress, no confrontations." "I know that is not realistic given your situation, but that is my medical advice. Your body is telling you it cannot handle any more." I lay in that hospital bed all night, watching strangers discuss my life on television. Pundits debated whether I was a gold digger or a victim. Gregory gave another interview, dabbing his eyes, talking about the woman I thought I knew, and I realized with terrible clarity that I was losing. Not just the court case or the public relations battle, I was losing my baby. I was losing my health. I was losing everything that mattered. For the first time since the nightmare began, I genuinely considered surrender. A soft knock on my hospital room door pulled me out of my spiral of despair. Maggie Brennan walked in carrying a small bouquet of flowers, her weathered face creased with worry and something else. Determination, perhaps. Or the look of someone who has finally decided to break a promise they have kept for too long. "I heard what happened," she said, sitting beside my bed and taking my hand. "Oh, sweetheart, I am so sorry. Maggie, I cannot do this anymore. He is winning. He is always going to win. I should just give up, let him have whatever he wants. Protect my baby from all of this." "No," she said firmly. "He is not going to win, and I am done watching from the sidelines." She glanced at the door to make sure we were alone, then leaned close. "I have something. Something I have been holding back because I promised your father I would let him handle this his way. But I am done waiting. Done following rules while that monster destroys everything." She pulled a USB drive from her purse. 22 years I have worked in that house. 22 years of watching men like Gregory come and go, lying and cheating and destroying good people without consequences. I have kept records, not your father's records, mine. Every conversation I overheard while cleaning rooms I was supposed to be invisible in. Every document I copied while organizing files. Every lie I watched Gregory tell to one person after another. "Maggie," I whispered, hardly daring to hope. "On this drive is a recording of Gregory and Iris from 2 weeks before he threw you out. They were in his study, planning everything, and they did not know I was in the adjoining room changing the linens. They talked about the dinner party, how he would humiliate you publicly to establish grounds for the divorce, how they would spin the story afterward to make you look like the villain. Gregory did not just cheat on you, Josephine. He orchestrated your destruction. He planned every detail of your humiliation like it was a business presentation. And now we can prove it." 3 days later, I was out of the hospital and on prescribed bed rest at my father's cottage. I sat propped up on pillows while Walter, Daniel, and Helen gathered around a laptop to listen to Maggie's recording. Gregory's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. "The dinner party is perfect. Everyone who matters will be there. Business contacts, society people, all the right witnesses. When I announce the divorce, she will not be able to hide her reaction. The humiliation will be total and public." Iris's voice responded, sweet and calculating. "And if she cries, begs, even better. I want witnesses. I want everyone to see what happens when you try to hold on to something you never deserved. I want her broken in front of people who matter." "What about her father? That sad little property manager?" Gregory laughed, the sound of it making my skin crawl. "He is nobody. What is he going to do? Evict me? Their laughter echoed through the recording. Two predators celebrating their impending kill. The recording ended. Silence filled the room. This changes everything, Daniel said finally. Gregory's entire legal strategy is based on claiming he acted emotionally. That the dinner party announcement was a mistake made in the heat of the moment, something he regrets. This proves premeditation. This proves malice. Can we use it in court? My father asked. Absolutely. Maggie recorded it in a one-party consent state, and she was present in the room when the conversation occurred. Gregory's lawyers will fight its admission, but they will lose. This is admissible evidence of planning and intent. Helen had been making calls from the kitchen. She came back with news that shifted everything. I tracked down Iris, she said. After she walked out on Gregory, she tried her usual routine. Found a tech investor in Austin, latched on, started the process of becoming indispensable. But here's the thing. The guy Googled her, found the news coverage of your divorce, kicked her out within a week. Where is she now? Extended stay motel outside Dallas. She is broke, Josie, running out of options fast. And here's the interesting part. Helen sat down, her eyes bright with the thrill of discovery. I did some deep background research. Iris Montgomery has been married 3 times before Gregory. Each time, she walked away with a significant settlement. And each time, her husband's financial records showed irregularities immediately after the wedding. Missing funds, forged signatures, suspicious transfers. You think she was stealing from them? I think the FBI might be very interested in talking to her about a pattern of fraud across state lines, especially if someone pointed them in the right direction. The video call with Iris was arranged for the next day. She appeared on screen, looking nothing like the triumphant woman who had worn my pearls at my humiliation dinner. Her makeup was uneven, hastily applied. Her hair was unwashed and pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her eyes were tired, the eyes of someone who has finally run out of moves. "What do you want, Josephine?" she asked flatly. "Come to gloat? I came to offer you a deal." "A deal? Honey, I do not have anything you want." "Yes, you do. You have recordings. Recordings of Gregory admitting to financial crimes. I know you were planning to use them as leverage after you married him." Her face flickered. A tell. She knew I knew. "Here's what I am offering," I continued. "You give me those recordings. You provide a sworn statement about Gregory's planning of my public humiliation, and you testify truthfully in the divorce proceedings about everything you witnessed. And in exchange? In exchange, I do not hand the evidence of your pattern of fraud over to the FBI. I do not pursue charges. You walk away clean, find a fresh start somewhere new, and we never have to see each other again. Why would you do that? After everything I did to you?" I paused, considering my answer. The truth was complicated, because I am not like you, I said finally. And I am not like Gregory. I do not want revenge. I want freedom. I want my baby to have a life that is not defined by hatred and lawsuits and endless fighting. You can give me that freedom. I am not offering you this deal because I forgive you or because I think you deserve it. I am offering it because destroying you would cost me more than letting you go. Iris was quiet for a long moment. "You are pregnant?" 8 weeks when your boyfriend threw me out. Almost 4 months now. Something shifted in her face. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was just the practical calculation of a survivor, recognizing when she has been outmaneuvered. "I would never know which. I will send you everything tonight," she said quietly. "And Josephine? For what it is worth, I am sorry. Not because you are making me sorry, but because I have done enough in my life to know when I deserve what is happening to me." Over the next 3 weeks, we assembled everything. Iris's recordings of Gregory admitting to securities fraud, Maggie's recording of the planned humiliation, the financial documents from Gregory's safe, my father's property records, proving Gregory's lies about the mansion, text messages, emails, bank statements, an airtight case built on Gregory's own words and actions. The FBI dropped their investigation of my father once they saw the actual evidence. Instead, they opened a new investigation into Gregory Ashford. His lawyers reached out for a settlement meeting. Gregory was finally ready to negotiate. The settlement meeting took place in a glass-walled conference room at Daniel's law firm downtown. We sat on one side of a polished table, Gregory and his attorney, Marcus Webb, on the other. Gregory looked different than I had ever seen him. Thinner, his expensive suit hanging loose on his frame, paler, the confident glow replaced by the gray pallor of sleepless nights. The arrogance was gone from his eyes, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. Marcus Webb made the opening offer. My client is prepared to offer a generous settlement, full ownership of the shared vehicles, $2 million cash, an agreement to cease all public statements about Mrs. Ashford, a clean break. Daniel did not even pretend to consider it. That is interesting, he said. We were actually going to offer something different. He slid a folder across the polished table. Mr. Ashford resigns from his company immediately. He signs over all marital assets to Mrs. Ashford. He issues a public apology acknowledging the premeditated nature of the dinner party humiliation. He agrees to permanent restraining orders and zero custody rights for any children of this marriage. Gregory's face went white. That is insane. I will never sign that. In exchange, Daniel continued as if Gregory had not spoken, we do not turn our evidence over to federal prosecutors, which, given the securities fraud, falsification of investor reports, and systematic financial deception, would result in a minimum of 10 years in federal prison. Silence. Gregory stared at the documents. His lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. I need time to review this, Gregory finally said, his voice barely audible. You have 24 hours, Daniel replied. I walked out of that meeting believing it was finally over. 24 hours, and this nightmare would end. I would have my divorce, my freedom, everything I needed to give my baby a good life. That night, I sat by the window in my father's cottage, one hand resting on my now visible baby bump. The stars were bright above the garden, where my mother had once grown tomatoes, and for the first time in months, I felt something like peace. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. Do not hang up, Gregory said. We have nothing to discuss, Gregory. Talk to my lawyer. I'm not going to sign your settlement. Then you will go to prison. Maybe, maybe not. But here's the thing, Josephine. I am not going down alone. His voice was strange, too calm, too empty. The voice of a man who has already decided to burn everything down. I am going to give a press conference tomorrow morning, before your deadline. I am going to tell everyone about the baby. My blood turned to ice. Oh, I know about it, he continued. I have known for weeks. I have sources at the hospital, people who will share information for the right price. A baby conceived during our marriage, hidden from the father. That is going to change the whole story, is it not? What do you want, Gregory? I want to make you a deal. You drop everything, the settlement, the evidence, all of it. You walk away quietly. And in exchange, I do not tell the world that you tried to steal my child. That is insane. No court would give you custody after everything you have done. His laugh was bitter, empty of anything like humor. This is not about custody, Josephine. This is about destruction. Even if I lose every case, even if I go to prison, I will spend every day, every dollar, every breath making sure that child knows what you did, how you lied, how you hid them from their father, how you used them as a weapon. I will poison your child against you. I will make sure they grow up hating you. That is my promise, not a threat, a promise. Silence stretched between us. Sleep on it, he said. You have until 9 a.m. The line went dead. I sat frozen for hours after that call, unable to move. Gregory was not threatening my legal case. He was threatening the one thing I could not protect with lawyers or evidence: my child's peace of mind, their sense of who they were, their ability to grow up without being torn apart by their parents' war. I could win every battle and still lose the war, because some wars do not end in courtrooms. They end in the hearts of children who grow up hearing poison about their parents. For the first time, I genuinely did not know what to do. At 3 in the morning, footsteps sounded on the cottage porch. My father appeared in the doorway, wrapped in his old robe, his face showing that he had not slept either. You should be asleep, sweetheart. So should you. He sat beside me on the window seat, his presence as solid and comforting as it had been my entire life. I heard the phone call. He said quietly, Dad, what do I do? If I fight him, he will spend the rest of his life trying to turn my child against me. But if I give up, he wins. He gets to walk away from everything he did. My father was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something I will carry with me for the rest of my life. Let me tell you something about your mother, something I have never told anyone. He looked out at the stars above the garden. When she got sick, when we knew the cancer was going to win, she made me promise her something. She took my hand and she said, Walter, when I am gone, do not let grief turn you into someone I would not recognize. Do not let anger and pain make you hard. Stay soft, stay kind, even when it costs you. I have tried to honor that promise for 27 years. It is why I did not destroy Gregory at your wedding, even when everything in me wanted to. It is why I let you make your own choice, even when I knew it would hurt you. But Josephine, being kind does not mean being weak. Your mother was not weak. She was the strongest person I have ever known. And her strength came from something Gregory will never understand. What? She did not fight to win. She fought to protect. There is a difference. He turned to look at me, his eyes holding all the love and wisdom of a lifetime. Gregory thinks this is a war. He thinks you are enemies, and whoever destroys the other most completely is the winner. But you are not fighting him, sweetheart. You are protecting your child. And protection does not require hatred. It does not require revenge. It just requires doing what is necessary. But what if he poisons my baby against me? Then you tell your child the truth, not with anger, not with bitterness, just the truth. And you trust that love is stronger than poison. You trust that a child raised with genuine love will recognize genuine love, even if it takes years. Gregory's threat only works if you believe hatred is stronger than love. Do you believe that? I thought about my mother, who I barely remembered. I thought about my father, who had raised me with patient love through all the years without her. I thought about the baby inside me, who had already survived so much. No, I said finally. I do not believe that. Then you already know what to do. 9 a.m. A hotel conference room. Press gathered with cameras and microphones, expecting Gregory's press conference, expecting another round of accusations and sympathy seeking. Gregory stood at a podium, notes in hand, ready to destroy me one more time in front of the world. But before he could speak, the doors opened. I walked in, visibly pregnant now, my bump impossible to hide, head high, flanked by Daniel, my father, and our legal team. Gregory faltered, his prepared script suddenly useless. What are you doing here? I am not here to stop you, Gregory. I am here to listen. Go ahead. Tell everyone about the baby. Tell them whatever story you have invented. This was supposed to be my announcement, he said, uncertainty creeping into his voice. It still is. But I am going to respond. Right here. In front of everyone. No lawyers, no press releases, just truth. I stepped to a second microphone that Daniel had already arranged. My name is Josephine Callahan. 4 months ago, my husband threw me out of our home in front of 200 witnesses. That same morning, I had discovered I was pregnant. I have not spoken publicly until now because I was advised that silence was strategically wise, but I am done being strategic. I looked directly at Gregory. Yes, I am carrying Gregory's child. Yes, I kept it private, not as a weapon or a secret, but because I wanted to protect my baby from exactly this, from being used as a pawn in a public war. Gregory has threatened to spend the rest of his life poisoning our child against me. I believe him. He is a man who plans his cruelties carefully. I have heard the recordings. But here's what I want everyone, including my child someday, to understand. I do not hate Gregory. I pity him. Because hatred is exhausting. Revenge is empty. And a life built on destroying others is a life that destroys itself. I turned back to the cameras. Gregory can fight me for years. He can spread whatever lies he wants. But I am going to raise our child with love. Not because I am naive, but because it is the only thing that lasts. And someday, when that child is old enough, I will tell them the truth. The whole truth. And I will let them decide for themselves what kind of people their parents were. I am not going to drop my case. I am not going to hide. And I am not going to let fear of Gregory's threats stop me from protecting myself and my child. The settlement offer stands. He has until noon. I walked out. Gregory stood frozen at his podium, his prepared speech useless, his threat neutralized. At 11:47 that morning, Gregory sat alone in the law firm conference room. His lawyer had stepped out. No one was there to hold his hand. He signed the settlement. Every page, every clause, full surrender. When he was finished, he looked up at me with something in his eyes I had never seen before. It might have been regret. You know I loved you once, he said quietly, in the beginning. Whatever you believe about me, that part was real. I know, I said. That is what makes all of this so sad. For what it is worth, I am sorry. About the dinner, about Iris, about all of it. Apologies do not undo damage, Gregory, but I accept them anyway. Not for you, for me, so I can move on. I stood up. Goodbye, Gregory. I walked out and did not look back. The federal investigation moved forward despite the settlement. Gregory cooperated with prosecutors, named names, provided evidence against bigger players in the financial fraud scheme. In exchange, he received 3 years instead of 10. I watched the news coverage of his sentencing. Him in handcuffs. The confident millionaire in prison orange. The man who had thrown me out of his rented mansion being led away to a cell. He served his time quietly. When he got out, he was 50 years old, broke, and unemployable in any field that mattered. The last anyone heard, he was managing a car rental counter at an airport 3 states away. He never remarried, never rebuilt, never became anything more than a cautionary tale. I kept my promise to Iris. I did not turn her over to the FBI, but the internet has a long memory, and her testimony in my divorce case made headlines. Her game stopped working. Every new target Googled her name and found the coverage. The Black Widow's web was finally exposed. Gregory's mother, Catherine, wrote to me once, about a year after the settlement, a handwritten letter on expensive stationery that must have cost her dearly. She had sold everything by then. Dear Josephine, the letter read, I do not expect forgiveness, and I am not asking for it. I just want you to know that I finally understand what I did. I raised my son to believe that image mattered more than character, that status was worth any cost. I created the man who hurt you. That is my punishment, knowing that. I never wrote back. Some wounds are too deep for correspondence. But I kept the letter. Elizabeth Rose Callahan was born on a Tuesday morning in March. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, brown eyes like mine, her father's chin, which we would deal with together. The moment I held her, everything that had come before faded into insignificance. The humiliation, the fear, the fighting, the nights I had spent wondering if I would survive. None of it mattered anymore. Only this small, perfect person in my arms. I finally understood what my father had told me years ago. When you were born, he had said, I looked at you and thought, everything before this was just practice. This is what I was meant for. I moved back into the mansion, not Gregory's mansion, my mother's mansion, the house my father had built for the woman he loved, now filled with the family she never got to meet. I stripped away the cold modern decor Gregory had chosen and replaced it with warmth. Family photos on every surface, my mother's roses blooming again in the garden, children's toys eventually scattered in corners. A home, finally, instead of a showpiece. I married Daniel Reeves 2 years after my divorce was finalized. Small ceremony, 14 guests. Maggie walked me down the aisle alongside my father. Daniel had been there through everything. The hospital stays, the court dates, the late nights preparing documents. He had never pushed, never presumed, just been present and patient and kind. When he finally told me he had been in love with me for years, it felt like coming home. Elizabeth calls Daniel Daddy. She knows the truth, told age appropriately when she was old enough to understand. But Daniel is the only father she has ever really had, the only one who showed up. We had 2 more children together. James and Rose, the twins, born when Elizabeth was 2. My father's cottage became too small for Sunday dinners, so we had them at the mansion instead, around a table long enough for everyone. I started a foundation for women escaping financial abuse, not with my father's money, but with my own, built from the settlement and careful investment over years. We taught women about credit and contracts and recognizing manipulation. We helped them build the independence their abusers had tried to steal. 12,000 women in 5 years. 12,000 women who learned what I learned the hard way. That money is not just currency, it is freedom, and no one should be able to take it from you without your consent. My father watched his grandchildren grow. He told them stories about their grandmother, about the roses she wanted to plant, about the house he had built for her that was now filled with the family she never got to meet. But time catches us all, eventually. Sweetheart, he said one evening as we sat in the garden watching the children play. The doctors say I do not have much time. A year, maybe less. Dad? No. Listen to me. Everything I have, everything I built, goes to you. Not because you need it, because you are the only person I trust to use it the way I tried to protect people, to build things that matter, to remember that money is a tool, not a treasure. You are going to fight. No, sweetheart, I am going to rest. I have waited 27 years to see your mother again. I am ready, but I am not worried about leaving, because I know you will be fine, better than fine. You are the strongest person I have ever known, stronger than me. My father died on a Sunday morning in October. He was 83 years old. He spent his last weeks telling stories about my mother, playing with his grandchildren, making sure every detail of his affairs was in order. His funeral had over 600 people. Business partners, employees, people he had helped anonymously for 50 years. I learned things about my father that day I had never known. Scholarships he funded, hospitals he built, families he supported through hard times without ever taking credit. He was Harold Morrison, real estate developer, and he was also just Walter Callahan, the man in flannel shirts who drove an old pickup truck and loved his daughter more than anything in the world. 20 years later. The mansion is full of life again. Elizabeth's graduation party fills every room, spills out into the garden, fills the air with laughter and music. My daughter stands surrounded by friends and family, her college diploma in hand. She looks like me, everyone says. Same strength, same warm eyes. I watch from the garden, silver in my hair now, and feel Daniel's arms slip around my waist. She is amazing, Josie. We did good. We did. All of us. Elizabeth breaks away from her friends and walks toward me. Mom, I want to talk to you about something. Anything. I've been thinking about my birth father. About Gregory. My heart clenches, but I keep my face calm. I found out he died, she says, 3 years ago. His obituary showed up in a search I was doing for a school project. I did not know either. It made me sad. Not for him exactly. I never knew him, but sad for who he could have been. What might have happened if he had made different choices. I have thought about that too, I admit. Many times. But here is what I realized, Mom. I am not sad about my life. I had you. I had Dad. I had Grandpa Walter. I had the best family anyone could ask for. She hugs me, and I hold her the way I have held her since the first moment she was placed in my arms. I just wanted to say, thank you, she says, for protecting me, for telling me the truth when I was ready, for never making me feel like I had to choose sides or carry your anger. You could have raised me to hate him, and I would have, but you did not. I just wanted you to be free, free to feel whatever you feel, and I am, so thank you. That night, after the party ends and the house falls quiet, I walk out to the garden alone. I sit on the bench where I last talked with my father, the same bench where he proposed to my mother 60 years ago. The mansion glows behind me, full of family, full of love. People ask me sometimes if I ever think about that night, the night Gregory threw me out, the night I sat in the rain with nothing but a suitcase and a secret growing inside me. I do think about it, not often, but sometimes. What I remember most is not the humiliation, not the fear or the anger or the triumph of what came after. What I remember is that moment on the curb when I decided to keep fighting, when I chose hope over despair, when I trusted that love was stronger than hatred. That was the moment that saved me, not my father's money, not the evidence I gathered, not even the truth about who owned the mansion. It was the choice to believe that I was worth fighting for. If you are listening to this story, if you are going through your own dark night, I want you to know something. You are worth fighting for too. Not because someone else says so, not because you have money or connections or luck, but because you exist, because you matter, because somewhere inside you is a strength you have not discovered yet. Gregory looked at me and saw worthless. My father looked at me and saw priceless. The difference was not in me, it was in them, in what they chose to see. Choose to see yourself the way the people who love you see you. And if you do not have those people yet, keep looking. They are out there, waiting for you. My name is Josephine Callahan. I was thrown out of a mansion by a man who had no idea he was standing on borrowed ground. But here's the thing he never understood. The ground was not what mattered. What mattered was who I became when I had to rebuild from nothing. And that, no one can ever take away. Josephine Callahan Reeves served as director of the Second Chance Foundation for 25 years, helping over 40,000 women escape financial abuse. She and Daniel celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary surrounded by their 3 children and 7 grandchildren. The Morrison estate remains in the family. Elizabeth plans to raise her own children there someday. Gregory Ashford died alone at the age of 56 in a one-bedroom apartment in Nevada. No family attended the funeral. Iris Montgomery disappeared into anonymity. Maggie Brennan retired at 75 and lives in the guest cottage on the estate where she teaches the grandchildren to bake cookies every Sunday. On Walter Morrison's grave, beside his beloved wife Elizabeth, fresh flowers appear every week. Someone still visits. Some love stories do not end. They just change form. And remember, you are worth fighting for. This story carries one powerful lesson. Your worth is never determined by the person who leaves you. It is determined by the life you build after they are gone. No matter how dark the night, no matter how cold the rain, there is always a morning waiting for you. But only if you refuse to stop fighting. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of your own strength or someone you love, leave a comment and tell me. Your words might be exactly what another woman needs to hear tonight. Hit that like button so this message can reach someone who is sitting on their own cold curb right now, wondering if things will ever get better. Share this story with a friend who needs to hear it. And if you have not already, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that could change the way you see yourself. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited to bring meaning and valuable life lessons to our audience. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for believing that love is always worth fighting for.